memorization to summarizing to mind mapping to speed reading, which are a lot of skills that are very useful for kids to assimilate knowledge a lot more effectively. And we'll be teaching them executive skills, as they call it. The ability to keep a longer focus, to organize your work, to plan your work. And that's one of the things we see, especially with smarter kids, that they often have a below-developed self-regulating system. So they're really smart, they're very associative, but sitting there and being concentrated for 15 minutes straight and keeping their desk drawer organized is quite a challenge. A lot of my trainings are recorded, and the most popular of all time is the one called, he's got an IQ of 145, but he can't clean up his damn room. And that's what we got most response to, because a lot of people recognize that. So we think it's important to actually teach that as a skill. And in terms of attitude development, we use the Gelukskoffer program, but it's also partly offered in English. It's the happiness suitcase, which is a set of lessons surrounding happiness, such as the types of happiness we just described. So they learn a lot about positive thinking, happiness, gratefulness, your talents, dreams for the future. We've got the Fixie and Growy method for the people who know the growth mindset theory, which is a theory that some people are more inclined to growing when they associate happiness to it. It's fun to grow, it's fun to learn new stuff, as opposed to people with a fixed mindset who have the assumption you either can do something or you cannot, but if you cannot, there's no point in trying anymore. And the growth mindset helps you learn that, and this method is actually designed to learn people or to teach kids that growth mindset. And one of the things that they are invited to do is to go into courage country. You can go to courage country when you have to do something that you don't want to do, that you're scared of doing. And you can do that from courage, in courage country, or you can do it from scaredness or scarcity based. And then you try to back off. So they challenge kids to build up more courage towards, in face of challenges. And we do a lot with positive psychology. Positive psychology has an elaborate program designed to help kids and help adults develop resiliency, develop optimism, develop happiness, grit, a lot of those factors. The teachers need to constantly support this attitude development. So we've had a training program, we've already started that, and we're going to continue that, in which they actually a little bit about our selection process, because we designed this program, but then we were looking for teachers to implement it, and that's pretty hard. I mean, some of you might actually have companies, and personnel selection is one of the hardest things to do. How do you predict if somebody's going to be able to do it? So what we did is we set out and asked people to apply. Over 70 people applied for the job. Well, we have 4 functions. And then we selected 17 people, and we gave them a 2-month training program in the evenings, asking them to apply it in their current day job, and then write reviews about it. And actually we went into their schools to look at them do it. And that's actually the best predictor of somebody doing something in the future, is whether they do it now. And the 4 people who were by far best at applying the things we taught them, like the principles we're talking about here, we've selected them as the teachers to guide your kids. They're going to work with these theories: fixed growth mindset, learned optimism. We spend a lot of time also on moral and ethical development. One of the topics of these days is, you might have heard about it in the news and stuff like that, but that kids are, being persuaded to go to other countries to fight and stuff like that, or peer pressure groups are a big theme these days. And it's too late when you start trying to convince a 16-year-old that it's not a good idea. You want to start with a 4-year-old to have such a strong moral compass that he knows what is right and doesn't have to listen to other people to find out what to do. So we truly believe that, and there are actually programs for that moral and ethical development is a very important subject that you should work on with kids. And developing grit. And one of the challenges we have is to have a combination of individual development, like all the talent programs you talked about, but also to be part of a group. Because I think if there's one big challenge for people these days, is how to balance between developing your own talents and fitting in a group. And what you see is that most schools will pick one of both. You have schools that are aimed at individual development, but they'll usually leave the group aside. Or you have group process schools and group dynamic schools, but usually they'll have less focus on talent development. And we're constantly looking at how to balance within one person those two drives. The one to excel personally and the one to be part of a group. And towards parents, we've got a flexible holiday program. In Holland, it's a pretty rigid system. They tell you when you've got holidays and you have to show up. Take your kid out of school one day and actually the leerplichtambtenaar will come tell you that that's not a good idea. They're pretty strict to that. We're part of an experiment to offer flexible holidays. You get 15 days a year that you can pick when you use them, like the 3 days you've got at work. So you can say, I'm going to add 2 weeks to my Christmas holiday and I can go away for a month. Or you can say, no, I want a couple of weeks in a row that we won't have Friday classes. So we can do some long weekends away. So you get more flexibility to pick your own dates as to how to deal with the holidays. We've got an integrated childcare system. Most schools, you've got a childcare and then the kid is done with school and he's brought to another room and there he gets his childcare program. After school program, before school program. We integrate it because we think it's ridiculous to close, one cupboard which has a lot of materials that the kid was working in and open another one with other materials because now we call it after school care. What if the kid is, at 2 o'clock happily working on his project, it's going really well, he's really enthusiastic, but then we say, no, you have to stop now because now you're going to go to after school care. Why don't you just let him work until 5 if he's happy doing it? If he's really into his project, if he's really in flow, let him do that. And maybe then the next day he can take it a little bit easier and spend more time reading on the sofa or something. So we really integrate the two. All the materials that are available to school are available to daycare before and after, and vice versa. And it also means that before school care, because we've got care from 0 to 3 years old as well, includes a preschool program. So some of the kids, 2 or 3 year olds, might actually participate in some of the school activities as well. If they're ready for it, if they want it, if they can do it in a relaxed way. We're not going to push them because we think that kids definitely have the right to play and take it easy. But why stop them if they want to? So we really are looking for a very elaborate integration in those two. We also want to cooperate with parents. We think that's really important, but use their talents wisely. I can tell from my own experience, our school does school cooperation as well. That means that, well, in my case, my wife, to be honest, but has to show up at school to clean and to make little bags with decoration and decorate other things and spend a lot of hours doing that. Well, I think that there are more valuable talents that we have than doing those things. And here's a lot of talent as well. What if you're an IT programmer? Wouldn't it be more useful to ask you to mentor a kid who has his mastery subject in programming? Then we've got a private tutor relationship, and it'll cost you once every 2 weeks a Skype call of 30 minutes, max. But this kid would be helped enormously, probably more than beautifully decorated bags in the school. Not against that, I mean it's a useful thing, but I think there are more useful things to do as well. And we want to spend a lot of time doing what they call psychoeducation. And not psycho-education, but psychoeducation. Where all these principles that we're doing with the kids, that you should know them as well. Why not know the parenting approach to positive psychology? Why not have these self-resiliency programs, the moral development programs, know what is going on? So we have monthly classes to teach them. And we are actually looking at probably once every 2 months, we'll do a combined class of the programs of the past month in English as well. So it'll be available in English as well. So how to use these skills in parenting in your life. Some additional services we'll be providing at cost. Warm lunches. We're looking at transport from home to school and back, because some of the people are from further away relatively. And we're offering a lot of additional workshops. Kids can take music lessons, take dancing lessons. There's a bunch of stuff we're going to integrate or we're going to offer over time. So that gives you kind of a high-level idea of what it looks like. I want to try to make it a little bit more concrete as well. What does a day look like? A day starts in the development group. Every day starts in the development group. It ends in the development group as well. And the development has to do with personal development. And in that personal development, we'll do a lot with positive psychology. Like one of the concrete assignments that we work with is the 3 Blessings Journal. It's an intervention from positive psychology, where every day you ask yourself, what are 3 blessings? What are 3 things that went well? But then the continuing question is, why did they go well? And it might be really simple, you know, what was the blessing of yesterday? I ate spaghetti. It's my favorite. And why did it go well? Well, if I think about it, because my mom knows I liked it. And she knows I like it, that's why she cooks it for me. And then the third question is, what can you do to get more of that? Well, I guess if I tell people more what I like, then the chances are bigger that they'll do stuff that I like. I mean, it's a start. So this way, a kid starts reflecting on the positive things, and this has shown to add to your learned optimism and to your resiliency and your ability to cope with negative things by learning to be able to focus on positive things. We'll do a lot of psychoeducation, so you learn about the 3 types of happiness, for instance. That's one of the lessons that they'll learn, and they'll learn to apply that. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is talent-based education. They learn about what kind of different talents people can have, and they get, for instance, literary assignments. You read a book, and then the question is, you know, the heroes. You just read Harry Potter. What are his talents? He has some talents, but he's not good at everything. But also an interesting question would be, Draco Malfoy, what are his talents? Because we can put him away as a nemesis, but he has talents as well. And actually, maybe from an empathic standpoint, we could even wonder, why does he do what he do? And in that way, you get a lot more self-awareness and awareness towards others. We've got a bunch of talent tests that you can do, so kids can see what their talents are. And one of the questions that they'll get regularly is, well, once you learn what your talents are, whether it's perseverance or connecting to other people or creative ideas, the question is, how will you use your talents today? How will you use your talents today to overcome the challenges in your life? And then you've got your learning group. Because most people have a hard time grasping this, because when you think of school, you automatically think of a classroom-based system. The system is always, you've got X number of kids, you'll put them in a room, you put one teacher in front of them, and that's how they spend their day. And that's definitely not how we work. The thing that most resembles that is a development group. Because every kid comes in, and in the morning he'll start with the same teacher that he has most of a bond with. That's also his mentor or his coach. But after half an hour, they'll split up. And they'll go into the learning groups. And that makes a big difference how self-reliant the kid is. And you've got different students. And the theoretical model we often use for that, and maybe you've ever sometimes heard of it, it's called situational leadership. Situational leadership is a model that tries to reconcile between 2 types of leadership. One type of leadership is the directive leadership. I tell people what to do, and when you tell people what to do, they know what to do and they'll do it. But the other style of leadership is democratic leadership, or supportive leadership, or participative leadership, great word, which says if people know what they need to do, they'll go after it themselves. Then you don't have to tell them what to do anymore. The problem is that these 2 get into a fight, because the democratic leaders say, those old mammoths with their directive micromanaging style, when will they learn that self-directed behavior is better than, you know, directed behavior from outside? But on the other hand, you've got the directive leaders who say, how many more of those participation discussions do you want to have before you just tell somebody what he needs to do so he knows what to do? And one of the metaphors I often use is learning to drive a car. Imagine you get your first driving lesson. You sit into the car and the guy next to you says, what do you think we should do? It's a very democratic question, but I don't think it's the most effective way of spending that driving lesson. Because when I get into a car with a driving lesson, I expect the guy next to me to tell me what to do. And that's style 1, directing. Highly directive, not too much need for support. He just needs to tell me what to do. I don't need like shoulder pats or compliments or something. Just tell me what to do. Oh, tell me what to do and I'll do it. The next phase, if I'm in the car for the 5th time and he'll start rattling off the same story again, I'm like, whoa, you know, I don't need to hear this story again. Now I want to be coached. I need to be directed. Because, for instance, he'll say, what do you need to do to drive away? What are the 6 steps? And I'll say, this, and that. And they say, almost right, but you need to change these two things. So he both gives input, he tells me what to do, and on the other hand, he's also being supportive and coaching me. And for most people, after a while, after having all these driving lessons, there comes a point where you say, I don't need the input anymore. Maybe you recognize that, some people after a 20th lesson, some people after a 60th lesson, but you go through a corner, you forget to shift back or something with the gears, and the guy says, Mr. Genius, you should shift back to the second gear. But you already knew that before he was going to say that. Your body just didn't do it yet. So you need to practice it. So you don't need new input, you just need coaching. He needs to tell you, this lesson, focus on this and that. Practice it, you'll be fine. And at some point, they'll delegate it to you. You won't need any support anymore. You can do it yourself. You don't need somebody sitting next to you and saying, wow, good shifting back to second gear in this corner. I don't think that would really amuse you very much. But this means that you need to address somebody at the level that they're at. And the same goes for students. Because this is about how self-resilient or self-reliant are you. And what you see, especially also again with smart kids, is that on a content level they're really smart, but their self-reliance is very limited. They don't know how to plan, they don't know how to execute. So you need to see, does this kid need directing or does he need delegating? And what you see with most smart kids is that they kind of go black and white. Either I'll tell you, you sit in my classroom and you listen to what I tell you and you do it, or if you don't want to do that, well, then you sit somewhere in the hall and you just do your own work. And it doesn't work that way. They need the steps in between, coaching and supporting. So that's what we do with kids in our school as well. When you get a kid that's very self-sufficient, that's been in the system for a long time and has had a lot of coaching, after the development group, they'll go to the individual working area. They've got self-working spaces and they create their own planning with the teacher as a coach. At the beginning of the week, they'll hand in their planning and the teacher will say, yeah, this is fine, just go do it, you'll be okay. Or, hey, mind this might be a little bit ambitious, or maybe I want you to be more ambitious. And he uses all the digital resources provided by school to go at it through his own page. And he'll ask questions when he needs them, and he gets regular coaching. But not everybody is self-sufficient. So some need to fill out a planning matrix in advance. We provide like this template, and they need to fill out, these are the 25 things you need to do, these are the 5 things you need to do, I'll put this here, put this there, put this there. He works mostly on regular subjects because the extremely self-reliant kid can also say, you know, I'm done with math for this week, I'll do something else. But some kids just need to focus on math and language development, stuff like that. And he cherry picks instruction moments where needed. There are provided moments. If you want to have fractions explained on Tuesday at 11:30, then the explanation of fractions will be given. So if you need it, come. If you don't need it, that's fine. We've got a video of it as well somewhere in the portal. So he can pick his instructions. But some are not self-sufficient. So they get kind of a pre-planned instruction moments. You need to show up at this moment, at this moment, at this moment to follow the instruction. It's not a question, it's an assignment. Because you haven't shown that you're self-sufficient yet and you're responsible enough yet to be able to pick between which one you should follow and which one you shouldn't. And he's slowly coached to go from a day planning to a week planning. I'll show you what to do today and tomorrow, and after a while you can make your own week planning. And when you've got a new kid who just comes in, they'll actually be trained in small groups to become more self-reliant. They'll get small group training on how do you get through that system. What skills do you need? How do you plan a week? What forms do you use? Where do you go? And they are guided from one place to the next. Actually, a teacher will drop them off and say, here, this is your instruction, sit here, follow this, and then the teacher has time to do other stuff. So it looks completely different from a regular school where there are 4 classrooms and they're all filled with kids sitting there kind of zombie-like listening to the teacher. But it's a complete combination of some kids working by themselves, some kids working in small groups under guidance, and some kids sitting in instruction areas. Is this possible? Yes, experience shows that within about half a year, about 80% of the kids will be pretty self-reliant in the system. We've seen several schools that adopt a system similar to ours, and kids are actually really good at doing it, and even kindergarten kids. 4- and 5-year-olds who walk through the school with like a little sheet or a little tablet which shows them where to go. So kids can be really self-reliant that if you train them, if you spend time sharpening the axe before you start chopping down trees. Quick question, because I'll do a question mostly in the end.
How could I track as a parent how well my kid is doing?
I'll say a little bit about reporting later. the reports you'll get. Yeah, because this is actually one of the things that we're actively tracking. In regular schools, you only get reviews on mostly content areas. He's good at math, or he's not good at math, or stuff like that. But we actually report specifically on towards self-reliance. Your kid has developed the skill of planning, and he has developed in the area of prolonged attention to detail. So you can actually see if your kid is developing in these areas as well.
But is it at intervals, or is that ongoing? Can I check that every week?
Yeah, this is a difference between what is available immediately and what is available eventually. We are working with an IT party to make it an ongoing process, that real time, as teachers are observing behavior, they're marking it, and you can follow that. The practice in the beginning will that the system is not there yet, so it will be too manually intensive to do all of that, so it'll be at intervals in the beginning. Then you've got the research group, which mostly will be filled with IPC and the mastery process. And I gave some examples, like a little kid can be working on his beadboard, while a 7-year-old is working on his professional soccer, that like this is his big thing. But then we'll be talking mostly about process and sources. I mean, one of the questions you always have to ask a kid before he starts some kind of new project is, what do you already know about this? Because I've had several students who confided to me and said, this is the 3rd time I'm handing in the same project. The space station project, I've done that 3 times. I've done it in my last year and the year before, and it's been the same every time. The first question should be, what do you already know? And what don't you know? And then the project should be about what you don't know. And that could be in the same area. You could make 6 different projects about professional soccer. No problem. But then every time you should have a new, more ambitious goal to learn something new. So that process needs to be guided. And maybe an 8-year-old wants to learn to program. And that might be more of a focus on an end product. We want you to be able to program this Mindstorm robot to be able to go from X to Y and do these and these things in the process. So is all of this going to be perfect when the school opens? No. This is the picture of what it's going to be like in roughly a year, year and a half. We'll have to contend with the starting period, with some kids having had 4 years of experience in a different school system and kind of being detrained in responsibility. In some ways, the 4- and 5-year-olds will catch up with the 7- and 8-year-olds that are starting, because they will more likely and more naturally take to this system. And we've looked at a lot of other schools that take a profoundly different route in how to design your classroom management system, and you see that time and time again, that some kids are really flexible in that, some have a harder time adapting. But it'll take some time. Is a reality check. This is not we're going to do everything different and we're going to experiment with your kids and your kids are going to be guinea pigs. Everything we're going to do with your kids, we have tried out in a different school. So all the components have been there. We've never seen a school bringing them all together in one go. We have built it on more than 100 years of education management experience. This is not just kind of like a pipe dream and somebody philosophizing like, this would be cool to do with kids, let's see if it works. But this is built on a lot of experience in all kinds of education areas. Some things are important to mention towards you, especially the group of English-speaking parents. So I would call this the informed consent part. You have to know what you're signing up for. It is a Dutch school. It is, and it will remain a Dutch school. We are by law obliged to do that, but it's also a principal choice. You will see, for instance, that the brochures here are in English. The subscription form is, in Dutch. The signing up form is in Dutch, because it is a Dutch school. So at least 75% of the lessons will be in Dutch, and we will teach your children to become Dutch students. So there's no scenario where your kids will stay 100% English speaking. That requires an international school. We are not licensed to do that. The teachers will understand English, but will strive to talk back in Dutch. They can. I mean, they're all selected for fluency in English. They're not native speakers. But the goal is for your kid to learn English, which is because your kids probably will have less of a challenge with the English materials, which is pretty steep for most Dutch kids. For you, the Dutch part will be a challenge. It's not a private school. We're publicly funded. That means that there are roughly 25 to 28 children per teacher, if you want a counselor to kid ratio. We work differently, like I just described. I mean, it's seldom that there's 28 kids sitting there with one teacher, but that's roughly the ratio. We ask €700 a year parent contribution, but we do have a program for people who are not able to afford that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, short?
The €700.
Yeah.
What is it for?
What is it for?
Is it for extra curriculum, or is it for workshops? Is it for the school?
Yeah, we do have a specification. I don't have it in my head, but it's a combination of things like the excursions, school trips. We've got some workshops, I think. We've got the T-shirt you get, the tablet you get. So this, not structurally, for school sporting events and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a delineated list of things, and as is required in Holland, the parent council has their right to have a say in that. So we have to consult you to have your okay in that. This is, well, slightly higher than average in Holland, but for special schools it's a lot lower.
But the after-school care is not included?
No, after-school care is not included. That's per hour price. With people working in Holland, they can claim subsidy for that. But that depends on your personal situation, whether you can. But yeah, no, that's separately charged. Yeah. Only group 1 through 5. We're going to start with kids roughly through age 8. Somewhere between 7 and 7.50 an hour, if I remember correctly. But you can look it up on the website. It's more specific. Depends also on the type of contract you have. We're going to take kids through 8, so 9 through 12 are generally not accepted. And we do have a preschool program of 0 to 4. In addition, we have thought, because we actually have had a lot of requests from English-speaking parents, so in addition to the regular contribution for the people who want additional language classes, we're going to charge €125 a month for language classes, but that means that you get about 7 hours a week of small group tutoring for your kid to learn Dutch from a specified teacher who is licensed to teach Dutch as a second language. So then you get a kind of accelerated program to get your kid more easily integrated into the Dutch system. And we'll be offering specific online learning systems as well, so your kid can spend more time mastering the Dutch language as well. The beautiful Dutch language, of course. Conclusion. If you're looking for a Dutch public school where attitude development is the focus, you get support in learning Dutch, because there's not a lot of support for English-speaking kids in the Dutch school system. Get better facilities as a parent without paying private school type prices. We really strive at connecting to the developmental phase of your kids. We've got really, really motivated teachers. I mean, just the fact that they risk taking a 2-month evening course program just to be able to be eligible to apply shows that they're really dedicated to doing this. We're really focusing on preparing kids for the future. So if this feels like a match for you, just, please do sign up. The practicality is that the forms are over there. Rekkie is in the back. She can help you as well with the Dutch parts of the forms. So I think this is kind of the general part of the talk. You undoubtedly have a gazillion questions, so we're going to see how we're going to do in a reasonable time to get through them. While this is slightly organized, I do want to thank you for coming here and listening to this story. So thank you so much, and thank you. And let's go for a bunch of questions.
Could you please describe just a general day for all 5 to 6 kids?
A general day of? Of school. A general day will start, you can get in from 8 to 8:30. There's an opening program. The kid is received and can sit in the classroom. If he wants, he can start with his tablet with his own process. 8:30, the developmental class or the development class starts. So you get in with your own mentor or the person who is mainly responsible for your development with the group, which is reasonably heterogeneous group, so it's not only, we don't put all the 8-year-olds together and the 6-year-olds, but it's a combination group of different ages, so we can learn with and from each other. You start for about half an hour starting the day, usually with a specific theme, like this week we're talking about meaning, or this week we're talking about moral development, or we're talking about talent development, and then we'll start priming the day. How are you going to get into the day, and how are you going to use your talents for that? From 9 to roughly 11:30 or 12, that depends a little bit, we're still working on the definitive schedule, will be the learning groups. So then you'll be, either if you're a new kid, you'll be taking from instruction to processing time. If you're more self-reliant, you can just work on your own methods.
And will there be lots of ironing in the beginning for these young kids?
Yeah, definitely. No, we've already, there's a lot of things that we've included in the first 3 months to work kids up to the point where they can function in this system. One of the things we do is we lower the number of subjects. So we focus primarily on maths in the first 4 weeks, so they can get used to the system, and then we'll add spelling, then we'll add English, then we'll add one by one as they're getting more used to it, and we'll use the extra time to train all these skills, to train the skills of self-reliance, of planning, of stuff like that. Then they'll have a break, a lunch break, which is communal. It's part of the program. And then after the lunch break, they'll start with the research groups, which is usually part of a 4 or 6 week project, which starts with, what do we know, setting goals, finding information, finding a way to present that, and bringing it all together in a final presentation. So they go through all these processes, and the teacher is mostly a coach, going from group to group, helping people get through that. The unit is designed, and the entire school is working on the same content, but at really different levels and different ways of applying it. And at the end of the day, there'll be half an hour, 25 minutes of the developmental group closing again. How was today? Did the intention you set at the beginning of the day, did that work out? How are you going to go home? How are you going to deal with what you've learned? How are you going to give that a place? So that's roughly a day, but there are days where we have school excursions, there will be days where we've got nature training, where they actually go outside and also learn to be in nature and be with nature. We've got gym classes and stuff like that, so there will be days that are different, but this is kind of a rough overview of a day as it would be. Cool.
So this evening was obviously catered to the English speaking neighbors. What about the opposite direction? So how does a child who's Dutch has practically no experience with English go with 25% of English?
The question is, how do the Dutch children cope with getting 25% of their time taught in English? One, it's a build-up, it's a ramp-up again. For the math, for instance, the Singapore math method, we do have the Dutch version of it as well. So slowly ease them into it. As the reinforced English to Dutch classes, we've got the opposite as well. We've got reinforced English classes as well, with digital methods to teach them that. And for some kids who want to do it either during school or after school, as a parent you could invest in additional language classes in smaller groups as well. So the combination of all these things will help us build up to the point where they can do it. Again, for kids who start at 4 years old, we'll ease into it pretty easily. The kids who start at group 5 or like the 8 or 9 year olds will need more support to be able to do that, but we'll adjust the goals as well. They'll easily meet the goals that are within the Dutch standards. The other thing is that when you work with digital methods, kids learn really fast. Like, I don't know if you've seen how fast they learn English language games. They can play it like in no time. Because if they're motivated to do it, they'll learn all the stuff that's needed to be able to do that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, for example, my son goes to a Dutch school and has been going to 5 next year.
Yeah.
What will happen with my oldest son is already going to the high school now. What will happen in the system if the seat goes 5 weeks stay home and then they have to go mainstream again?
Yeah, what happens when you reach group 8 and they have to go to high school? Two things. This is one of the reasons why we put a limit at group 5. We said we want to have kids at least for 4 years to be able to actually really make that transformation and make it be useful. Because otherwise you have to make the transformation and halfway through group 7 you have to slowly start preparing them, if they want to be able to go into mainstream schools again. One is that what I've heard from a lot of schools that work with different systems that are more geared towards skill and attitude development, that all of these kids fared better in high school than the regular counterparts.